What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and this one I want to talk about Tesla and SPY and break down why next week is going to be very big for the markets, what potential setups are existent on SPY, and what you should be watching for going into next week. I'm also going to talk about Tesla stock and break down some other important things about it and what's very likely to play out for it, as we have some very big things coming out for the week. But before I break anything down about how today went and some very important things to note, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just about 13 days, so check it out before they run out. That's out of the way. Let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at the market, I just want to note that on SPY, we had a very interesting day. When we opened up, we actually saw this thing bounce and try pushing a little bit, but then it started to become very stationary, going flat from there. And I warned you all from the morning video and also during the afternoon one that when you look at the options chain on SPY, we had something very interesting developing. We had over about 1.5 million calls expiring and about 2.86 million of the puts expiring, with a 2.04 put to call ratio and max pain at $439 a share. So, with all of this happening, the market makers, I'm sure you guys know who they are, right? They were incentivized to try to push the market up closer to max pain. They wanted the market to get close to about 439. They wanted that. And they obviously could not get there perfectly, but they wanted us to just get close to it to cause as much pain as possible for the options buyers. Because remember, when we buy options, somebody else is selling them. They have an opposite position. Who is that? The market maker. And when they end up doing that, their main goal is to cause as much pain for us because it puts them at an advantage, right? Because trading options is like a football game. There's a winner and there's a loser. So when that happens, the market makers did whatever they could to benefit them their own selves. So they wanted, to pump the markets, and that's what we ended up seeing today. The market actually pumped. There was one instance during the last, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes where SPY actually pushed all the way up to 437.5 before coming back down a little bit, and we saw a lot of buying continue to, fill into the markets. So with all of this going on and the market holding up like this, how are things looking going into next week? And the answer is we have some big catalysts that can start pushing the markets. One thing I want to remind you all about is going to be Nvidia's earnings. They have earnings on Wednesday after the market closes. So approaching this earnings, there's so much hype. There have been so many upgrades. So many analysts are talking about Nvidia. This thing may pump with the market. It may push the market up. This is going to be huge because remember, Nvidia is huge. It has a big effect on how the market moves. So with Nvidia potentially pushing up, this could help the market bounce a bit, not to mention additional technicals and things like that. And if the market bounces together, right, collectively, this could help Tesla bounce a little bit. Now, does it have to be a crazy big bounce to all-time highs? Am I a permable on Tesla? The answer is no. I'm simply going to tell you what's most logical and what under the charts are suggesting. So could Tesla get a small bounce? Sure. But then don't forget, after Nvidia has earnings, it could also crash. It could tank very hard. And if that were to happen, Tesla's going to tank with it. If Nvidia starts pushing up, Tesla could also push up with the market as well afterwards. So it all depends on this to start us off. Then later on for the week, for Thursday/Friday, I don't know if he's going to be speaking on Wednesday as well, but we have some Jackson Hole meetings basically happening. During them, on Wednesday, there's going to be one. On either Thursday or Friday, we're going to have Jerome Powell speaking. I think on Friday is going to be the main day. Jerome Powell is going to be giving a big speech on Friday, and he is incentivized to cause the market to get a rug pull. That is one of his main goals. It's going to benefit him a lot. I think there's a high probability of him potentially doing something like that. So when you look at what Powell did last time, or at least during a previous Jackson Hole event, he doesn't always speak during them. And the last time he spoke, I mean, he spoke a couple of times, but at least one of those times, he was very hawkish. Very hawkish. I think this was like last year in 2022 near August. He was so hawkish, the market ended up just getting a rug pull. And there's a possibility of this happening at the very end of the week, especially because it's a Friday when he's definitely going to be speaking. He could move the market big time. So that's my warning for everyone. We could start the week very strong thanks to Nvda, thanks to Apple also breaking out. But near the end of the week, the market could get a huge rug pull thanks to Jerome Powell. So you have to be prepared for this. You have to be ready. For Nvidia, it's getting lots of price upgrades. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow in another video, and then talk about how this may like affect Tesla. But looking at some data, let me just switch over to Tesla. There are some important things to note. First off, when you look at the share price of Tesla, many analysts are just continuing to give Tesla these new ratings, most of which are like not too horrible overall. Most of them are like equal weight ratings. Some of them are quite neutral on Tesla. And then looking at it, Tesla has a tendency of moving similar to the market. If you look at next to like SPY and the QQQ, there are lots of similarities. The algorithms are still taking over, and they started to buy a lot near the very end of the day today, which is very interesting. Looking at the volume of Tesla, the short volume relative to price, this is actually starting to drop a little bit, which is a good sign. There's a little bit less shorting going on Tesla. And finally, the overall volume on Tesla went up to about 135 million. So it did sell off on higher volume, but then it got bought up as well. So that's a good sign for Tesla. Volume is coming back. We just need the right volume in the right direction. The shorting went up a tiny bit, only 31 million, nothing too crazy. The overall short interest on Tesla has been relatively modest compared to other periods, such as like June, even like a part of July. So it's very interesting to witness. I don't really see an insane short squeeze for Tesla, but I do see some potential for it to try to bounce thanks to Nvidia and also thanks to Apple. So now let's break down these charts and then talk about what's very probable to happen to Tesla. So looking at the charts, let me just mention that we're going to go back to Apple to start us off. One of the stocks that was leading the day was Aapl. Aapl is looking quite decent. When you zoom out of the chart, there's a potential accumulation phase that formed a nice inverse head and shoulders like pattern. So we might see a drop a little bit, a little drop on Monday before it tries to bounce if this truly does play out. If there's really bad news, we could see this thing come all the way down to like the 200 EMA around 168 before the bounce. But what's looking more bullish and what seems more probable would be a small little drop. It's about 173.8, then a bounce after that, and a push up to this imbalance seems more probable for Aapl. It started breaking out today. It actually broke above resistance at 174, which is a good sign. If it continues, that's going to be bullish for the markets and Tesla. For something else that's going to be very interesting to watch is going to be Nvidia. I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow, but there is a potential setup on it. Let me just show you what the setup could look like. So on Nvidia, and once again, I will talk a lot more about this tomorrow. There is this setup that is starting to develop. I mean, it's starting to flag. It could break out. It's likely going to break out very soon, lead the market up. I'm very excited for its earnings. It's going to be very fun to watch. But once again, I'm going to talk more about this later. On SPY, however, something else is very interesting. There are two possibilities on SPY I'm leaning towards. Number one would be another little drop before this thing tries to bounce because it's forming an inverse head and shoulders and also a potential accumulation phase. This will be dependent on the news and stuff like that, but there is a possibility that SPY kind of like drops a little bit like this. Comes down to like the lower 435s. Then we get a really, really nice bounce going into Monday, thanks to Nvidia starting to pump. And this thing just starts slowly, uptrending and making its way back into the 440s as it pumps with the market. And I think that's very probable for, the next couple of days for it to get back to like 442 or so and etc. But then after Nvidia's earnings and after Powell speaks, who knows if this is going to last. I could also space this out a bit because I kind of made this very thin. This is a real possibility, and this would help Tesla and other stocks try to follow these trends for like Wednesday. This is one possibility that we just continue to pump just a bit. See some resistance around this like 440 area, but then we just try to keep going. And then, like, I'm not saying that the market's going to just keep going forever and just go and go and go. There's always the possibility of us getting a rejection after Nvidia's earnings, maybe after Jerome Powell gives his speech and coming right back down to these levels. That is also another possibility. So I just want to be honest. Before that happens, we could see something like this play out, most definitely. But if this doesn't play out, there is also the possibility of one more drop. So we could If there's bad news that comes out, I mean, I would not rule out the possibility of us coming down to like 431.5 first by Monday and then getting the bounce. Then the bounce comes because that's where there's a very big demand zone. That's where buyers could step in. Maybe we gap down because of some news and the market just starts pumping after that. That is another possibility. I would not rule this out. Uh, we may visit that low before we get some kind of bounce, and then after some kind of bounce, market could always reject and come down lower because the overall trend is not truly bullish. This overall trend is more bearish on the 30 minutes time frame, as you can see right here, making lower highs so far. So, like I said before, each of these are very possible. And I think the way this moves will dictate Tesla. Either the market gets one last drop, SPY bounces off support, and then it just starts pushing, or it just goes from here, forms an inverse head and shoulders, and just goes from here. And then we get the push immediately. We're going to be watching to see in the morning which one plays out on Monday. Both of them are very possible, but I'm leaning more towards the green line, the inverse head and shoulders playing out. This is looking more probable to me for the market. So it's more likely we see something like this playing out, just to be honest with you all. But I want to be open-minded just to be safe. Finally, to end this video, I'm just going to talk about Tesla. How is Tesla looking from a technical standpoint? I'm not really seeing any like divergences or anything like that forming, but the volume is coming back, which is good. And much of this volume was bullish volume. We're starting to see some buying pressure returning for it. Now, what else is significant is we have a possible inverse head and shoulder structure on it. And we saw some very nice buying in the after hours, which is a good sign. There are two possibilities on Tesla. Either I see this thing coming down. Let's just say there's bad news and something bad happens. I mean, I'm not leaning in this direction, but this is just one possibility to be prepared for. If we get some kind of bad news, we could see Tesla visit like 209 to 210 and then get the bounce and start pushing after that on like Monday with Nvda and Apple and make its way back up to like 221 or so, or even higher levels than that. That is definitely more than possible, and we should always be prepared, for other possibilities like this. But just to be honest with you all, even if it does see something like this and this thing just starts, continuing to pump, it doesn't have to go to 225. It depends if it could break 221 or not. If it does break it, 225 is technically possible, but it could always reject after Nvidia's earnings or Jerome Powell's speech. It could always come back down to levels like this. This is just like a very, very quick example of how it could move. The second possibility would be Tesla does not get much of a drop from here and it just starts pumping. And I think this is more likely to happen on Monday because of the current structure and the amount of buying pressure we saw on Friday. So it might just start pushing as soon as Monday and start making its way up all the way back up to 221. And then we'll see if it could try to break this resistance. It may take some time for it to break it, and it may happen slowly by the time we get to Tuesday or something. And then later on, Tesla could reject off resistance and come back lower. That is still a possibility. But this is just like a bounce that I'm eyeing for, a very like minor one, nothing too insane. And it's going to be very fun to witness and fun to play. So when looking at this, just as a reminder, the overall trend is still bearish. Tesla's still making lower highs. So even if we get a bounce back to like 225, 230, it could still get rejected and come right back down after their earnings are out, after Powell's speech, or who knows what may cause that to happen. So I want you to be open-minded to this possibility. It's just another possibility, but this could be how Tesla ends up moving. I'm leaning more in the green line direction, so I'm leaning more in that direction. I think Tesla's going to try to bounce soon. And if that's the case, then it would be awesome. If not, we could see something like this instead. But I'm leaning more towards the green one. So let's just delete this one. I'm leaning more towards this possibility. I just want to let you guys know that. So going into like Sunday, I will talk more about Tesla and also maybe tomorrow as well, and break down how this thing may end up moving and some other important levels. But the best thing to do is to remain calm, cool, and collected, and to never, ever quit. Be very, very level headed, be calm throughout the entire day. And we're going to watch what happens by Monday. I'll also talk on Sunday if I still hold the same opinion, because you never know. New news could always come out during the weekend, which could shift my analysis. But we'll see until then. And as of right now, this is what I'm seeing for Tesla as the most likely possibility. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Tesla in the market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.